welcome to episode 24 of Audiovisual Cultures, the podcast that explores different aspects of sound and image-based cultural production. We're just back from seeing Skyscraper. We're going to have a bit of a chat around that and a lot of the other films and aspects of culture that it's connected to. Just before Andrew joins me to get into that, just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's been liking, sharing, most importantly listening and enjoying, if you have been, and finding useful the discussions that we've been having. Everything you do to help out is really much appreciated. If you can support on Patreon to help sustain and improve the podcast, that would be incredible. For now, please enjoy the discussion and I'll be back at the end with a bit more information in case you would like to get in touch or help out or be involved in some way. So that was very stressful.
Was it?
Yeah.
It was tense, I'll give you that.
I was getting stressed. I had sweaty palms. I was getting really sweaty palms going, why isn't he getting really sweaty palms? How is he able to grip onto all those things?
For its many qualities, I give it much credit, and one of those qualities was giving a sense of just how dirty he was becoming through the course of this film.
Yes.
Which is, I suppose, one of the many things that it shares with Die Hard. Was that too early? Was that less than a minute into our podcast that I've mentioned the thing?
The D word, the DH word. No, I think Die Hard and Towering Inferno have to come up with this. I don't think we can avoid them. It is like a 21st century mashup of those films in a way.
And I'm tempted to race straight for the end and go, except for the fact that the building was really well designed with fire in mind. And when they finally get back of the actual controls of the building, because the entire building seems to be controlled just from an iPad, and other forms of tablet are available, and it is just called the tablet. Once you get control of it back on your tablet, the building works fine.
And all you need to do is turn it off and on again. That's what Richard Ayoade has been telling us for years.
Yes?
The IT crowd.
IT crowd, yeah.
I quite enjoyed Skyscraper, actually. I thought it was a fun summer night out.
For a film which makes you go, wow, those characters must be hot.
Yeah.
It was released at an appropriate time of the year, because what is it? It's the 15th of July?
And it has been a really hot day, which is very unusual in Newcastle upon Tyne, for it to be described as a hot day.
And so it's hot through most of the Northern Hemisphere at the moment, and that means I was inclined to go, wow, those people must be
boiling.
Yeah. And there was points where I did find myself going, really? Would they even still be able to breathe at this point? They're getting such a huge amount of heat pumped up towards them. But I suppose there is this thing we need to acknowledge about the audience film contract, which the film encourages, or at least asks the audience to agree to, the one that's specific to action movies. There were several points in that film where I just thought to myself, no human would have that much strength to do that, or no human would have enough stamina left to do that. He's lost quite a lot of blood. That's just not possible. But then going, oh, in the parallel universe where this takes place, it is possible for a human to be that strong or have that much stamina, or the laws of physics work a bit different, things weigh a bit less. You know?
Well, is it not more that this is what film is capable of making us capable of? It's cinematic in the sense that, so the magic of cinema,
well,
the human is able to do these things.
But yeah, because you and I were talking on the way back about there being moments when Sawyer, Dwayne Johnson's character, he'd be pushed to his absolute limit and he just about managed to survive a situation. He'd come out of it completely exhausted and beaten and gasping for breath and wounded a bit more. And then in the next scene, there'd be a little bit of elliptical editing to about a minute later, he's fine and he's carrying out a conversation with somebody he's just managed to get to. The magic of editing makes that possible. But I think that what I'm talking about with action movies is that in addition to the films taking place in movie world, the world implied by, oh, people couldn't do this much fighting because we can just edit together lots of shots of them being really active without getting out of breath. In addition to being shifted into that world, I think we're being shifted one step further into the, is that even physically possible world? There's been so many points in action movies where I've gone, oh, I think a person would die if they fell from that height and landed on their ass. Or I think, yeah, you definitely wouldn't be able to hold your breath for that long. But then if either I have a willingness to suspend disbelief and just go, this is how fiction works, it asks us to permit that in this story space these things are possible. But what else might have been going on might have been the no suspending of disbelief at all, I suppose, because you can often go, oh, it's an action movie, it's got conventions, it's got standards, it's got levels which previous action movies have reached. And so when a character achieves a certain thing, it's not even meant to make sense even within the world of the story. It's just a thing that we have been shown. I'm not saying I was going down one of these two routes for sure. Maybe it was a mixture of the two. But both of them involve an appreciation that this is not quite happening in this world. Either it's not happening at all, because we're aware of the contrivance, or the world in which it's happening is the parallel universe where these things are possible. So I think that's part of the enjoyment of an action movie, is going, this is pure play of some kind. And I think matching that, there was a good degree of humour in this film. I think it's important for action movies to have a bit of humour, not just to have we're having a bit of a pause from the intensity now, we have to have a bit of a come down, which seems to be necessary. But in addition to that, to just have moments of levity, which necessitates having main characters who have a bit of a sense of humour. Rawson Marshall Thurber could do that. He could write quite funny dialogue as well as quite tense action.
Well, it's pretty typical that you need some quips in there to lighten the tension. There were some quite funny lines. There were times, and I don't know if it was people were far away from us or what, but it wasn't until quite near the end, when you really needed the comic relief, that I heard anybody else laughing at things that I was finding quite funny. I wanted to get in with a particular mention because I was so happy to hear that Neve Campbell was in this film, because we do not see her enough. I think Scream was a formative experience in my cinema education as a teenager. It came out when I was really quite young. I think I was 13 when I saw it, and it's an 18, so I shouldn't really have seen it. Ooh. I got in to see Scream 2 when I was 14 and seeing the cinema.
Also an 18?
It's an 18. This is why they brought in those Think 25 laws, because I remember the person on the desk asking me and my friend, "Are you 18?" And I just went, "Yeah." And my friends started laughing right nervously. I was like, "Shut up."
I'm trying to get my way illegally to see it.
We have to see this film that we're 4 years too young to see.
I never had that. When I was a kid, I thought, I'm too young to see that, therefore I won't go and see it. The whole trying to fake my way in stuff never really crossed my mind. There might be some reason why I shouldn't see that.
No. I mean, the thing with Scream is that they are scary. They are really violent and bloody and things, but they're postmodern in the sense that they're highly referential and highly aware of. And the characters are talking about and inspired by lots of slasher movies that have come before, and the types of characters they are. And Neve Campbell's Sydney is the crux of it all. It's her they're trying to get at. She's basically like Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween.
Does she have sex?
Yes.
And lives?
And lives. Because that's the whole thing. That's what a lot of the first one is pinned on in Scream, is that they're all 16. Her boyfriend's played by Skeet Ulrich, I think his name is said. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. It's him and his mate are the two who are doing it together. The night everything kicks off, he convinces her to trust him to finally sleep with him, because she's been resisting him for ages. She's wanted to wait. At the party they're all at, they've had this big discussion about how the virgin survives, but if you're not a virgin, you're gonna die. She manages to fight back and survive.
Quite interestingly, Scream was her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th film. She's got quite a big career in addition to all the Scream films.
She does, yeah. She's done a lot of lower budget films, quite a bit of TV, but it's unusual to see her in quite a big film, if that makes sense. So something that's had a really big budget. And
she did a damn good job of, not just acting, you know. I sound so patronising to go, she did a very good job of the acting. These women are just not constitutionally adept at doing. No, some good acting. Did a good job of the fighting that her character had to do, and her character had to actually do some I've been in the army fighting.
She's really kick-ass in the Scream films. Her character survives through ingenuity, her survival instincts, and being a strong person, getting through the trauma and fighting back. She does not give up. There was a lot of that in this character. It was as if she's Sydney at the right age now. Even the way her character was dressed was very similar to how Sydney dressed in the first film.
I must admit, early on I thought, this is a situation in which we've got two people who've been in the army, Dwayne and Neve, their characters.
Yeah, and he was FBI.
Oh, right.
It's a SWAT team, isn't it? But they're working with the FBI.
There was mention of him having done something before that as well.
Okay.
But anyway, so he'd been in an armed unit of some kind. And
it said an FBI 6 years service.
And then there was an armed response unit. He'd been some special unit of the police as well as the FBI. She'd been in the army, so we've got two characters who are very capable here, and she's a trained
naval surgeon.
Yeah.
It says that her character served in Afghanistan for 3 years. The implication is that she has seen stuff go down.
So we've got these two main characters, and I thought, okay, they both had the kind of training you'd need to be an action hero. And what we're going to have now is we're going to have, she's given all that up to just become a full-time mum, and he's got a career which doesn't involve guns anymore, but it does involve actually going out and being a breadwinner. And I thought that, and I thought, I'm not going to like this movie, because I'm going to spend the whole time going, grumble, grumble, grumble. What have they done with the female independence that's been gradually accrued over the course of decades of action movies? But then, they completely surprised me, because they give her a lot more to do than just screaming and running around with kids. She has some fighting to do, she has some having ideas and helping the police to do, and ultimately when it comes to the climax, she's the one who, when Sawyer, Dwayne Johnson's character, has just run out of things he can do, she's the one who has an idea and brings the entire situation under control. Doesn't just save him, but saves the entire building.
But she does that through a method that it's something he usually does for her in fixing her phone. And the implication is the jokey relationshipy bit, establishing how close they are and the banter between them, is that her phone regularly stops working properly. And
it is an iPhone, isn't it? It's specifically an iPhone, right?
She likes getting him to sort it out for her. And the implication is that, or at least the joke she makes, is that she's perfectly capable of trying the thing he keeps just doing that works, and that is simply rebooting it. But she says, I'd just like to let you feel useful.
Yeah, that was quite a slaying moment.
And so, of course, then that's the thing that solves all the problems in the end, is she just reboots the gadget.
He reboots
a building.
And it is, as far as this film is concerned, the way that you control buildings is through the same way that you control online banking on your tablet device. So it's the same way that you navigate on your tablet. And I suppose that's another one of those suspended disbelief things, because we just have to go, oh, it's all done with the kind of interfaces that anybody could use, rather than it being the kind of thing you need training to understand. But it did make it a very visual film for the building and for screens all over the shop in this film, telling you...
And there's so much a crux of everything that happens. Well, there's one scene in particular. We do need to come back to Neve Campbell and her character, though we're not done with her. But if you've got screens up...
We'll do screens.
This is a film that's very obviously got its genes from Towering Inferno and Die Hard, but the very top of the Pearl building is this special orb. The public don't know what it's for, and it's revealed that it's full of all these different types of screens. I can't remember even the terms that were used. The whole thing is screens. There's cameras, there's reverse cameras, there's double cameras throughout the whole thing as well, so that it can actually show you Hong Kong underneath it and around it as if you're standing in midair. It can also be a really elaborate hall of mirrors, and that's what it turns into, and the big final set piece is built up to that. There's some really excellent action set pieces throughout. Actually, I found it really enjoyable and tense, and it builds up to that one, and that really reminded me of Orson Welles' The Lady from Shanghai, because the big set piece in that film is in a hall of mirrors. That's where the violence comes to a climax in that film. So it really made me think of that on a large scale, but of course using screen technology and live camera feed technology onto these interactive screens as a souped up version of a hall of mirrors set piece.
It's a hugely touch-screeny environment. These are screens that you interact with in a variety of different ways. And so one of the ways is that a lot of things that you might not think are a touchscreen actually are a touchscreen. So there's one point where the character who has built the skyscraper in the first place, Zhao Longji, who is played by Chin Han, or the owner of the building. There's one point where he goes into a room which just seems to have 3 windows on one side looking out over the city. And he goes up to the middle of them and puts his hand on it, and it shimmers with light because it's not actually a window, it's a screen, which is a cover for where he keeps his safe. And so things that don't even look like screens that are actually screens. There's one point where he puts his hand on the head of the lion, I think. and it glows green as it takes his palm print.
At the penthouse.
Yeah. There's things which read.
That's the other guy, isn't it?
It's the security guy.
You know Ben, his name is? Mm-hmm. The one who stitches up
All right.
Sawyer, his former colleague who stitches him up.
Oh, yes, it was.
Because it's him bringing him into the meeting. Just on the screen thing and the windows, had Anne Friedberg lived, this would have been incredible for her book, The Virtual Window, the history of windows and screens, basically. There's a reading to be done using that book, that history, I think, there.
The film is big on having a huge crowd at ground level watching the drama that the non-diegetic you and me audience are also watching. On that, when they finally emerge from the building at the end and it's a kind of reuniting of the family thing, this story space audience who've been watching the story on big screens, of course they have only been watching tiny scraps of it, the kind of stuff you can film from a helicopter that's outside the building. They haven't been watching any footage from inside the building. So as far as they're concerned, there's been a bit of heroic action from the outside, the purpose of which they don't understand, and then these people come out and they're okay, but they look really beaten up, and that's it. I thought what we're having here is we're having this story space version of us as the audience, plonked in there in front of the characters, doing a proxy of what we're supposed to be doing, which is really celebrating the success of these characters.
I wonder to what extent we can identify films that try to rewrite and heroicise 9/11 and the Twin Towers. There's lots of shots of people in the crowd underneath watching through their phones or holding their phones up to film and watching at the same time. They're getting that instant mediation of what Sawyer might be doing the times that he comes outside. There was one part in particular where the wire he needs to cut to get access into the penthouse to be able to attempt to free his daughter, he needs to do this whole other feat of brilliance and Spider-Man out the building using duct tape.
That's the verb.
With rope that he's magically in a MacGyver style found somewhere. But he has to go outside, and there's a part where of course he's trying to get back in and he's hanging from the rope, and it's hanging from his prosthetic leg, and the prosthetic leg is something we need to go into as well. So he's hanging off that, and of course his leg is starting to break apart with the weight. It's all very tense, and he's dangling there. And then there's cuts to people in the crowd who are filming this on their phones, and I couldn't help but think about the New York Twin Towers part of 9/11 where people were filming the likes of The Falling Man, and I couldn't help wondering, is this a way of rewriting that? Because that image circulated so instantly and ferociously and has been used in so many different ways, and it can be read in lots of different ways, and it causes lots of debates of what would you do if you were in that situation. Would you stay in the burning, falling building, or would you jump? It takes the idea of that, of either dying in an utterly vulnerable state or taking control, but many might see it as the coward's way out, but maybe it's that last burst of freedom because you've got autonomy to have jumped and you have maybe a quite exhilarating experience during the fall. I don't know. I just remember debates about that kind of thing happening, and what if you changed the narrative? What if you change that to the guy dangling by a rope and being able to climb his way back in?
They managed to have two separate occasions where he's hanging off the edge of this building, and one, it's when he first gets his way into the building, he doesn't quite make it, and so he hits the edge, the lip of the bit he's trying to get into, and he grabs a bit of twisted metal that's hanging off the edge, and he's just hanging on the edge of it, this hanging bit of twisted metal with his fingertips. And then the second time is when he's dangling by a rope that's attached to his own prosthetic foot. And I'm thinking, okay, we've seen how this thing's attached to his stump. He's going to be slipping out of his own prosthetic foot very quickly at this point. But now manages to recover. And so, this is the falling man climbing back up into the building and finding a way to make it so that the building can be saved and the fire can be extinguished. And the terrorists, the only ones who die. The fact of having a floor which is on fire seems to be a big part of the plot of this film, because it's something like the 96th floor where they first set the fire, and it's a chemical fire that is actually caused by the sprinkler coming on. So there's a bit of using the building's own fire defences against it. And then the whole point is the building has technology for containing fires within compartments. And so not just within a floor, but within a part of a floor. The only way a fire could spread from one part of the building to another is from one floor to another even, is if the fire suppression measures are taken offline. It's all done from this remote control location that's about 2 kilometres away. For a good chunk of the film, all we're seeing is just one floor on fire, and then of course the plan that the terrorists have is to get control of this remote control facility and shut down all the fire safety measures, and even do things where they open up the vents and so that oxygen is being sucked into the floors that are on fire. The result of that is that the fire starts to really spread up the building. For a lot of the film, it's below the floors which are on fire, everyone can get out, that's fine, but then above it, that's the high pressure situation, that's the situation of peril, and the film is all about getting that situation of peril under control. And even at the point when the fire's reached its wave, the very top floor, it's still brought under control again. So yeah, that seems to be a really intense fantasy of the Twin Towers thing being there's a floor in each of the towers which is completely impassable, everyone above it is dead. It's a way of taking that and going, no, we are going to fix this. It strikes me initially as, really, is US collective unconsciousness really still trying to deal with that? But actually, back in the 90s and early noughties, America was still refighting the Vietnam War in lots of different cinematic scenarios. And that was well over 20 years after America had withdrawn from Vietnam. So yeah, it still seems completely sensible that 9/11's being re-dramatised now. I hadn't thought of that.
I think that, and then I think there's an obsession about possible dangers of high-rise living as well, and the dystopias around that. I was thinking of High Rise, you know, the Ben Wheatley.
Yeah, we saw it last year.
It was the year before, I think.
And that was the opposite of this film, wasn't it, in virtually every regard.
Just more, the similarity actually is in that the architect has the very special paradise-like penthouse at the very top. Maybe so actually I think the film there's a lot more to it than just Towering Inferno, Die Hard, and it does different things with both of those tropes as well, because I think with Towering Inferno it's been years since I've seen it. Paul Newman, I think he's the fire chief, and the thing is the building, something about it's been constructed and they haven't taken the right precautions. It's a bit like Titanic but in a high rise that goes on fire. I think it's his family, his wife at least, who's been at a party, or they've been at a party, and people get separated because it's between him and Steve McQueen, isn't it? It cuts between the two of them being heroes.
Yeah.
I think it's Paul Newman's character's wife who's that damsel in distress person, but I think she's quite a strong character. If I remember correctly, she's leading people through the vents, she's keeping people together, organising survivors. If I remember that correctly, I think I was about maybe 14 when I saw it on TV, so I'm a bit sketchy. I think with Die Hard, it does things differently. There are similarities, but it does do things differently. I mean, I think we were saying earlier, Dwayne Johnson's shirt largely stays on.
And we are used to seeing Dwayne Johnson topless.
Well, they find other ways to draw attention to his bulk.
Yeah.
The character of Ben who stitches him up when they embrace, when they first meet, he kind of goes, whoa, the muscles.
Beefcake.
We were talking as well about Bruce Willis's John McClane has the rapport with the police officer who's on the ground.
Yes, it is Sergeant Powell. Al Powell, that character. And yeah, there was a definite nod to that in the form of the police chief who's in charge of all the operations at ground level in Skyscraper having no relationship whatsoever.
No, he's just
with Sawyer.
His relationship's mediated again. It's through the screens, it's through the news footage coming in live of Sawyer doing things when he's visible around the building or elsewhere, because there's the part where he has to get through Hong Kong to get back to the building. And I never understood how, because he got a boat, and I'm really confused about how he got back to the building. But anyway, so it's a one-sided relationship this time, but actually it's also mediated through Neve Campbell's character, Sarah, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's mediated through Sarah having dealings with the police directly, and she's able to help. But they suspect her, and yet they give her a police jacket to wear, even when they're still suspecting her that they might be involved in some way. And it turns out that she can speak their language. She explains why she can speak their language. how she knows different things. I wonder, because you said there about her character, there's an implication in their lives in the United States. Say, you don't know what, she might still have her career there in Hong Kong for her husband's business. That doesn't mean she's no longer a surgeon.
Yeah, I suppose the film, just by not mentioning her having a career at all,
and them having twins who are quite young, there is this sense that she is an absolute superwoman. While it's really welcome, I think when we want women being represented more in film, we want well-rounded characters. We want them to be people. But then again, it is an action movie, and of course all the heroic characters are going to be superhuman in some way. But it is just a bit frustrating that any ordinary woman couldn't break through and go, right kids, I'm saving your lives.
She has to be an army-trained surgeon, or a surgeon who is also army-trained.
And has lots of languages.
I suppose, yeah, that's one of the downsides of trying to create heroines, is that the implication is that 99.9% of people wouldn't be able to do this, and therefore it's a non-identifiable character.
You made an interesting point earlier when we were talking on the way home, that the character of the damsel in distress seems to have been transferred onto the children.
Yeah.
As the othered, weak, they don't have personalities, they just have things about them that are plot points. Well, the boy does. So it's a little boy and a little girl, and they're twins.
Finding names of children.
It's Henry and Georgia.
Yes.
And Henry's asthmatic, so of course the fire's more of a problem for him than the rest of them. I had higher hopes for the little girl because of course they get split up. So the mum's with the boy and the dad's with the girl. I was hoping for more because she did seem to just revert to, help me daddy, 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 help me daddy. And I really wanted to just bite the guy in the hand or start yelling, get off my daddy, or start beating round her.
If we go back 24 years to True Lies, Harry Tasker's daughter, who's suddenly yanked into the story at the end of the film, has a bit of ingenuity in that she nicks this on-off key for the nuclear bomb. She nicks it and runs off. She has an attempt to try to undermine the terrorists who are using her as a hostage. That was a more active bit of daughter behaviour of a main male character than we got in Skyscraper here.
I was wondering to what extent, again, does this further the fantasy? Because he's becoming the all-American hero. Dwayne Johnson's becoming the face of that, I think. To what extent is it the United States' need for that father-hero archetype?
It's constantly iterated that he's going in there to save his family. He doesn't give a fig about the politics of why these terrorists have set fire to this building, why they've attacked him and stolen this tablet.
It's not about the bigger picture in any way. His bigger picture is the family.
And there's this one moment where the guy who's the leader of this group of, I don't think terrorists is the right word.
They're not quite. They're terrorists in the sense that they're doing an awful lot of violence and killing.
But for no ideological commitment. It's just because they're the head of a crime syndicate.
It's thoroughly bad people. It justifies all the things that happen to them.
Yes,
when their plans go wrong.
Right.
All the paperwork.
When the head of the terrorists, his name's Corey Bota, says to Dwayne Johnson's character, Will Sawyer, he says, if you don't open these doors here, I'm going to throw your daughter off the roof of this building. And there's this shot, because it's an over-the-shoulder shot of Bota talking to Sawyer, of Sawyer's face, so Dwayne Johnson's face. And he's been quite severely beaten by that point. He's being held up by either arm by these two guys. And it's the shot of his initially bowed head, and his head lifts up and stares Bota in the eye. It's that, oh right, I will have to actually get serious now.
You will not kill my seed.
So much of the story is him interacting with his kids using the line which is...
Is it who does daddy love?
Yes, that's it, yeah.
And they chirp me.
Who does daddy love?
Me.
There's lots of that. There's him carrying them, holding them. And I suppose the film also has these two images in it of people not doing proper care of kids. Because very early on we have the thing which costs Sawyer his leg. Very little of it is explained, but it's the 10 years ago scene where there's a male character who seems to have killed a police officer and has taken his own family hostage in his own house, and when the SWAT team come in, he's actually holding his own son in front of him as a human shield, and then when he puts him down, reveals that he's wearing this explosive vest. And virtually the same, well, of course it's a rhyme, isn't it? Because when Bota right at the end finally gets, it's just him, all these other cronies have been killed. It's just him, and he's got his back to Sawyer and he turns round. around, and of course he's holding Georgia, Sawyer's daughter, in front of him, and a rhyme of that much earlier shot. Good caring for children is contrasted with this highly evil regard for kids.
One thing about that though is that because he uses the screens to orchestrate something there to make it look like he's facing down Boda when actually he's behind him, but Boda was turned that way and surely would have seen him approach, so it unravels a wee bit. Don't think about it too much.
I did some of that.
It's just frothy fun, largely.
There was moments where I thought, okay, this building's been on fire for hours.
Yeah.
How does anything work
Anybody
anymore?
breathe?
Because, at the end...
Everything would have overheated, surely.
Sarah's like, turn on the fire suppression system again. On every single floor of the entire building, CO2 starts being sprayed out of this fire suppression system and it chokes the fire. Okay, fine, the fire's over. How on earth does anything above the 50 or so floors that are on fire work? Hasn't everything been melted by that point? How on earth is the building still standing? Because this fire's been intense enough
the
to
structure stays.
Yeah.
You can't really poke at it with too many vigorous, even gentle questioning. It unravels a bit.
I'm sure that the Cinema Sins YouTube channel, we'll get to it shortly.
The violence is pretty intense. There was quite a lot of swearing, I thought. Given that it's a 12A, I just thought it's the absolute upper end.
A well done 12A. Is this how Mark and Simon refer to? They talk about... No? They talk about things being well done?
Well done you was their film competition because it had to be eligible for a U certificate.
Alright. So there's no such thing as a well done 12A for Mark and Simon?
No.
Okay then. I dare you. I now challenge you to go back and listen to every single bit of
need to.
ever.
You're talking nonsense.
I'm sure I've heard them talk about a well done 12A. It was nearly a 15.
No, they haven't used that term. Not in the circumstances.
I stand corrected.
I just thought it was a really top end 12A. I mean, I would have thought some of that was a bit on the knuckle for kids, given that people take really small kids in the 12As.
Well, let's take a moment to consider the fact of our main protagonist having a prosthetic leg.
Dwayne Johnson's character was apparently partly inspired by, and Dwayne Johnson was trained by, an actual amputee who's a Paralympian, whose name is escaping me. I just read about it very vaguely. I can't remember what website it was that I saw the article. It was something I saw on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter as much at the moment because my smartphone is a bit dead, but this was one thing that I saw. I think I clicked on it because the article headline was both something to do with the amputee thing and that Neve Campbell's character was a strong woman, something like that. I thought both of these things sounded quite interesting, so the clickbait got me. But I read it because I thought, Neve Campbell, I really like her, so I'm quite keen to see this now. I read the headline and I thought, well, women being strong characters is all well and good, but actually we just want them to be a bit like people.
Maybe this is the kind of springing back that you get after a level playing field has been depressed for so long.
Yeah.
Get a bit of springing back and then it will finally reach a level. The Paralympian who is an amputee is called Jeff Glassbrenner.
Okay, so he did a lot of training with them, and I was reading about it thinking, this is great, but when are we going to get to the point where the actual amputee plays an amputee character? It's a continuation of the sort of conversation we've had before about deaf actors playing deaf characters in films and so on and so forth. At the same time, was it this morning or yesterday morning, I saw a story and it was something that led me to The Guardian, but then one of the top 10 headlines was about Scarlett Johansson backing out of a role because it was to play a trans character, and it's a female to male transition. A lot of trans activists were really upset about that. She seems to have listened to them and taken it on board, and she backed out of the project. The article said it wasn't clear whether the project was going to go forward or not after this. I thought that was interesting. This is still fairly in fresh memory after the row over her casting in Ghost in the Shell being an example of whitewashing. I think it's quite a similar issue, is using able-bodied actors in disabled roles, and then I think a role like this and a hero like this, you have to bring into question the term disabled unstable. As we mentioned, when he's dangling from his prosthetic leg outside the building, it's the fact that he can pull the leg off and still pull himself up even without that part of one of his legs. It saves his life that he's able to pull the leg off.
He does manage to move extremely fast and extremely well for someone who at some points in the film doesn't have his prosthetic.
Yeah, but he uses it to jam the door open when the door to the penthouse is closing again, after he's gone through all that to get it open and it's closing. He uses the leg to jam it open. I mean, this thing really should be in pieces. And also, I suppose in a way, it smacks of quite a bit of privilege that they have, is that he's got a really quite advanced prosthetic.
I gather that if you have a prosthetic, the number one thing is that because it's not connected to your skeleton, what's bearing the load of your body is the flesh of your stump. And so that can mean lots of chafing, lots of bruising, and just needing to take the weight off it every now and then. And this is somebody who puts a massive amount of weight on his stump. This is another one of those, we're going to have to suspend disbelief about that one kind of elements of this film, I think. There's the occasional bit of limping, but he uses that thing as if it's not a prosthetic at all.
I was noticing every time there was a we need to stop for exposition moment, he was standing up. They were having lots of conversations and he was standing up, and I was going, oh come on now, I know this is fiction, but he needs to sit down, he needs to get off that leg.
He needs to have a sit down.
Because that is bound to be killing him, just for the reasons that you've just said. But yes, he is a kind of Superman in this, so you have to just ignore a lot of things.
I've seen action movies in which people endure more than his character does, but I can't think of an action movie in which somebody achieves as much as his character does. The climbing and the fighting, at one point he gets hold of a sword, the interacting with other people in a way that permits him to dominate them. It's featured in the trailers, but let's just mention it. The jumping off a crane through the open space between the crane and the building into a window that he smashed in the building using the hook on the crane. You just die from the jump.
When it starts to kick off and he's in Hong Kong, he's been at Ben's apartment, it seems. Things have kicked off between them and he's out in the street and it's all going down. And I was thinking, what compels you to steal a police motorbike instead of talking to the police? Obviously, you don't get an action movie from that, but I mean, he commits crime. You know, it's one of those action movies where the hero has to actually commit crimes to be the hero, and entirely gets away with it because they're the hero and they've done a big thing. When actually, how reckless has he been in trying to save 3 people?
I think it's a good third of the film for which he's being chased by the police, with the police thinking that he's in on it with the team that's taken the building. And I suppose it was a bit of a refreshing change that we didn't have to wait until the end of the film for the police to realise this. The police seemed to realise this quite quickly. When they thought, oh right, his family are in the building and he's trying to get in the building, so all right, he's just trying to get in to save his family. He can't be with
But at no point do they ever say, why didn't you just tell us? We'd have helped you. Are the police really that awful everywhere that you can't just say, this is what's happening, here's as much as I can give you, please help my family? But of course you don't get a big action movie with lots of big action set pieces that need lots of digital design.
Yeah, because we ought to admit to your listeners that you always sit through all of the credits.
Yes, I like
for every film.
They're gold mines of information.
Only very cursorily paying attention to the credits for a film such as Skyscraper will reveal to you that the overwhelming majority of the personnel who worked on this film were visual effects artists.
There's it's a huge amount of labour goes into making any film, and on those films the lists are almost endless.
And it's multiple companies.
Yes, many.
Not just a single company doing the work, but work apportioned out to multiple companies because there's so much of it. At one point, watching the credits drift by, and I thought, oh, that's a lot of stunt performers. It was an action movie. Of course there'll be a lot of stunt performers. I lost count at about 120 stunt performers. And then I thought, okay, there's going to be roughly an equal amount of visual effects artists, but no, it was 10 times that amount of visual effects artists that were being listed under various different companies. Some companies were doing a lot more than others. Of course, that was a lot of visual effects artists. We have to give a bit of kudos to, Steve Jablonski for the music. The tone was spot on.
I thought it was well made. I don't think it's doing very well at the box office.
Ooh.
It's not doing as well as other things, which doesn't mean it's not doing well, but it's not doing as well as probably expected.
Well, we have just seen it on the Sunday of its opening weekend. And of course, by opening weekend, we actually mean something that began on Wednesday.
During the week.
Either Wednesday or Thursday.
Weekend. And it's been really good weather, so I don't know if that's affecting how many people are even going to the cinema this week. I don't even know what else is out this week.
Hotel Transylvania 3.
Okay.
That seems to be the big one that it's up against.
I think that is the one I read is doing much better at the box office.
But it has already managed to gross itself upwards of $25 million in the US.
And Hotel Transylvania, it's the third in a series, so it's got an inbuilt audience and parents with kids starting to finish school. I know very little about this, and I was thinking it would be nice to consult my former colleague Gary Bettinson, because he works on Hong Kong cinema, especially the relationship between Hong Kong cinema and the US. This is just dripping with transnationality, this film. Most films are, but I think it's really obvious that it's particularly these two places, the US and Hong Kong.
One thing that did strike me was there's one moment when he actually decides he's going to tell the police, but the two guys who are trying to arrest him don't speak English, and that's a real problem. And that's about it for people in Hong Kong not speaking English.
Yeah.
Almost everyone else that he interacts with does speak English.
Yeah.
Oh, Noah Taylor. That's who else I wanted to pick it up for.
Of course.
Who was the evil English guy. Nicely done. The actual head of the villains wasn't English. He wasn't Alan Rickman. But they had one of the villains, the one played by Noah Taylor, be English and nicely villainous as well.
But the main guy was European. Hans Gruber. Not quite,
right,
a bit more northern than that, but still European in origin.
I do wonder what the universe would look like if Die Hard had never happened. Whether
Be a
this
bleak
film...
world. It's the best Christmas movie ever made. The spirit of the festive season.
Yeah. Miracle on 34th Street can go hang. Even the extreme postmodernism that is How the Grinch Stole Christmas can go hang. This is perfect combo.
It doesn't have, I suppose, the catchphrase of the likes of Die Hard, Yippee-ki-yay.
What I quite like about action movies now is that the thing that they used to do, which was they would have the main hero, just before they were about to kill somebody, do a quip, and okay, fine, it has a crescendoing effect to it, but also it makes the hero into a psychopath.
Yeah.
Because it makes them into somebody who goes, okay, you know how I'm about to kill you? I'm just going to pause and make some sort of pun before I do it, and then I'm going to kill you. And that does chillingly reflect on the main character. So I'm glad that finally this has been judged to be something we ought not to be doing in action movies anymore. That's a lack in this film that I'm okay with. Perhaps one thing I can help your listeners with is what you do during films, which is that you're utterly rapt and utterly attentive until the tension just becomes too much to bear, and you have to do something like you have to grab something, or you have to turn to one side. You just have to maybe do a small face palm, but you'll keep it really minimal, and then your attention will be.
There are films where I'm entirely absorbed, and I think it was better. It's just my anxiety's been so bad the past few years. Probably a few years ago, it wouldn't have fazed me sitting through a film like that, but that even when I knew everybody was fine and there was no real danger to anyone, I was just finding it really stressful to sit through. So I think that says more about my mental health, and that has deteriorated over the last lot of years, than it does about this is just how I am now, but it's not how I always was.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson is going to receive a letter from you going, are you okay? Got really worried about you.
Dwayne's fine, he's grand. We're becoming quite fans of him, I think, because we've seen him in quite a lot of stuff.
Including Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. When that song finally started playing, did we record?
We didn't
for that?
record, no, because we watched it with the children.
Yeah,
but it
we
was
should
really
have.
fun. I was dubious about it for a while, but the reviews were really good. I actually really enjoyed it, and the first film is quite awful, but I liked it when I was a kid. I really liked Jumanji when I was a kid. I had it on VHS. There was a cartoon that I watched as well for a bit. I thought Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle was really fun. I thought it was cleverly written and everything, and it was good crack.
We both like Moana.
And we both love Moana. Moana has a very special place in my heart. I mean, I know there's problems with it still, but I went to see it with a very dear friend when we were both having a very difficult time when we were living in Manchester, Salford areas. We went to see that together and we were both having a really rough time, and it was just a little moment of joy in a very difficult period. It's got a very special place, and of course, what can I say? You're welcome. Who knew Dwayne Johnson could sing a wee bit?
This is the cynicism which I probably need to expunge from my being. I didn't think he was the one doing the singing. I think it might have been that thing they do in Hindi films where they just switch to somebody else for the singing bit. Okay, I stand corrected. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I will personally write a sorry letter to Dwayne.
There are ones where it's quite clunky and obvious, like Jack Skellington in A Nightmare Before Christmas switches from Chris What's-His-Face.
That would be Sarandon.
To Danny Elfman. Totally different voices.
Dwayne's star is about as high as it can be.
He is Hollywood's nice guy, I think. He just seems to be a thoroughly... Everybody who interviews him, everybody who works with him, just says he's the loveliest person.
He's not somebody I regard as a crossover star anymore. This is an important distinction.
He's been doing this a long time.
Is this the guy who's a wrestler who's having a bit of a go at acting?
No, he's an actor.
Yeah, he's now an actor.
But then with wrestling, it's acting anyway, because it's all fabricated, it's myth.
There's crossover stars and then there's crossover stars. There's crossover stars who move from one sort of performance to another, and then there's crossover stars who move from mountaineering to entertainment, and then that's quite a big jump.
I suppose then actually that brings us full circle a wee bit, because with the Scream films and Neve Campbell being quite formative in my film experience, well, I was a big fan of the Mummy films with Brendan Fraser. Of course, that was where Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson had his movie break, was in The Mummy 2.
As the Scorpion King. Poor thing.
Mm-hmm.
That nearly put an end to his movie career, didn't it? Because the CG version of him is awful.
It's really bad. But I think people overlook that because it's not his fault that the CGI was really bad.
Yeah, the bit where we see him is okay.
He's pretty good. Those were probably very roughly-ish the same time. My teens has become this homogenous blob because my memory's so bad now. They're both of that rough time period.
I had a period when I was 18 when I made the effort to try and watch basically every action movie that the 80s had ever thrown up. And I did really well. In the long canon of action movies, that definitely added new things. New things that in some cases were just new because they mixed elements from several different things before, but it's not like that's not been done that way before. So this is a nice addition to the canon of action. Anyway.
If you find our discussions interesting and useful, please subscribe on iTunes and give a small monthly pledge on Patreon. I'm trying to raise enough to pay a monthly subscription to SoundCloud to make every episode available on iTunes and other platforms, and to upgrade the website, which can be found at audiovisualcultures.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening and for spreading the word. Catch you next time.